I've seen some pretty cool places in my life, but they didn't prepare me for this. Over 400 kilometers in a jeep across Bolivia's high altitude. Flamingos, natural hot springs, colorful lagoons and the biggest salt lake on earth. Welcome to Bolivia. Our 3 days trip started in the small town of Uyuni. It's about 3050 meters above sea level. I really recommend giving yourself about 3 days to adjust to the altitude before you get altitude sickness. We booked our tour with a company called Worldwide Travel, huge shout out. The guide strapped our backpacks to the roof so we had plenty of space inside the jeep. The first stop was just a few kilometers outside the town, the train cemetery. These trains once transported silver and other minerals during Bolivia's mining boom in the late 1800s. But when the industry collapsed, the trains were simply abandoned. Now they've become a photo stop for tourists. You can climb on them and take pictures like everyone does here. Yes, it's touristy, yes, it's crowded, but also kind of magical, I guess. But for me, there were just too many tourists. Afterwards, we drove about 30 minutes to what I'd been dreaming of for years. Salar de Uyuni. And oh my god, this place is magical. This place is unreal. The largest salt flat on Earth, covering over 10,000 square kilometers. It sits at an altitude of around 3,600 meters and it's so flat that the entire area has a variation of less than 1 meter. Just endless white stretching in every direction. It was formed by the evaporation of ancient lakes, leaving behind a crust of salt that cracks into perfect hexagonal patterns. During the rainy season, a thin layer of water creates a mirror effect so perfect that it feels like you're floating in the sky. Absolutely insane. I actually made a full video about this place, you can go check it out. Beneath that salt is one of the largest reserves of lithium, that stuff that powers phones and electric cars. Mining is already happening here, like in the area of Lipi, but there's growing debate if Bolivia should focus more on sustainable tourism or the extraction of lithium. We spent hours here taking photos and driving around, just existing in this quite surreal place. We were supposed to camp on the lake that night, but the high water made some areas inaccessible, so we just returned back to town in the hostel. By the time we returned to the hostel, I was completely covered in salt. There's a photo of me that night and yeah, it says it all. Day 2 started early and it was packed. We drove deep in the highlands of the Potosi region, where the landscape consistently shifts. Dry plains, towering volcanoes and patches of ice and dust. The first surprise was a really small lagoon, more like a giant puddle, surrounded by llamas. Bolivia is home to 4 types of camelids. Llamas, the classic ones used for carrying loads. Alpacas, smaller and fluffier, bred for their incredibly soft wool. Vicuñas, white and tiny, with wool more expensive than cashmere. And guanacos, but they are more common in Argentina or Chile, but occasionally spotted here. We didn't get too close to them because we didn't want to annoy them, and they also sometimes bit, but just watching them roam around and walk peacefully was just incredible. Later on in this video we entered a protected national park and the scenery turned completely different. And now the first real lagoon of the day was Laguna Cañapa, and I actually thought I was seeing flamingos for the first time in my life in the wild, but it was actually the second, if you remember, at the Salt Lake. I was quite a little disappointed because they were far away, but that feeling didn't last long, because then we arrived at Laguna Hedionda, or Smelly Lake, a ridiculous name for a ridiculously beautiful place. And this was one of my absolute favorite places on this whole trip. It was so beautiful that it felt like something was kinda off. Bright turquoise water surrounded by mountains with an altitude higher than 4,000 meters. And this time there were hundreds of flamingos and they were really close. I sat down in the high grass, just listened to their squawks and watched. One of those moments where you almost forget to film because you're just there. Flamingos get their pink color from carotenoids in their food like shrimps or algae. The more they eat, the pinker they get. It's as simple as that. So if you see those bright pink ones, they probably have been eaten well. Despite their elegance, flamingos are actually quite noisy and social. They live in colonies that can number in the thousands. It helps them avoid predators and improve the breeding success. We had lunch in a restaurant with floor-to-ceiling windows, so you could watch over the whole lagoon. The food over the whole tour was basic, but honestly, in moments like this, who cares? Then something completely unexpected happened. We stopped at a rocky cliff and suddenly these little creatures popped out. Like rabbits crossed with chinchillas. Turns out they're called whiskechas. More precisely, mountain whiskechas. Long whiskers, twitchy noses, round ears and a fluffy tail. You're allowed to feed them small apple sizes and let me tell you, it's the cutest thing ever. Especially when they sniff around with those long whiskers. Honestly, this was one of my personal highlights. As the sun started to set, we reached Laguna Colorada, the famous red lagoon. The red color comes from algae and sediments that thrive in the mineral-rich water. These algae produce beta-carotene, the same pigment found in carrots. And as you already know, flamingos are also eating these algae, so they're also wear a lot. Especially in the afternoon light, the lagoon has a striking reddish pink color. It was absolutely freezing. The wind made it a lot colder than it actually was. That night we reached our highest point, the Hostel Nuevo Amainker, sitting at nearly 4,900 meters above sea level. I've never slept that high in my entire life. After dinner we quickly stepped outside. The sky was incredible because there was no light pollution at all. Although the moon was a bit too bright for those amazing star pictures. Day 3 at 4:30 we were up again. I don't think I've ever woken up this early in my entire life. This time we were heading for the geysers. Sadly I couldn't film anything because I felt super nauseous and I had to stay in the jeep the entire time. I think it was because of the high altitude and the lack of sleep. But then came the reward, natural hot springs. These geothermal pools are heated naturally from underground volcanoes. The water is rich in minerals like sulfur and magnesium, which are believed can help with sore muscles and circulation. After 2.5 days in this high altitude, it was exactly what we needed. Steam rising in a freezing morning air, warm water and a backdrop of extremely beautiful mountains and the extremely beautiful scenery. It was just perfect. We all relaxed for a while and honestly it was just the perfect way to end this trip. I knew Bolivia was beautiful, but I didn't expect it to feel like this. These 3 days here were just a glimpse of Bolivia's nature. There's a lot more to explore here, like a jungle in the lowlands or much colder temperatures in other regions. But for me it was a highlight and I can absolutely recommend a trip like that. If you want to do it and you have the money, just do it. It's totally worth it, but take it slow with adapting to the high altitude. Thank you guys for coming along, and if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey, there's more to come. See you in the next one.